All right, welcome back everyone for another deep dive. You ready to unpack today's news?
Absolutely. Let's get right to it.
So we're looking at January 11th, 2025, and well, it looks like we've got a pretty diverse mix today.
Yeah, it looks like urban planning's on the docket. There's some stuff about global hunger, too.
Oh, and police reform in India. That's always a hot topic, right?
Right. And some crowd management issues as well, seems like. Plus organic farming, even some genome stuff.
Definitely lots to dig into. Should be interesting. Let's start with, well, the future of Indian cities.
Okay, yeah.
One source is saying that by 2047, like half of India's population will be living in urban areas.
Wow.
Yeah, 50%.
Mm-hmm.
That's a massive shift. And I can only imagine the strain it'll put on resources and infrastructure.
Yeah, I mean, think about it. That's like, what, double the number of people
Yeah,
in cities that are already struggling?
exactly. And a lot of the existing urban plans are, well, let's just say they're not exactly cutting edge anymore.
Oh, definitely not. I mean, we're already dealing with such serious housing shortages. It's pushing people into slums.
You know, I was just reading that back in 2011, over 17% of the urban population was living in slums. That's a huge number.
It is, and it's not getting any better.
And then you've got the environmental impact, too.
Yeah.
Pollution, traffic, strain on water resources. It's
Yes,
a lot.
perfect storm. Yeah.
So how do we tackle this? How do we make Indian cities more sustainable, more livable, even with this kind of population boom coming?
Well, one thing that comes up a lot is empowering urban planners, giving them the tools and the knowledge to come up with truly innovative solutions.
That makes sense. If we want them to plan for the future, they need the right support. Now,
Exactly. They need to be able to look ahead, not just react to what's already happening.
so what would that look like in practice? What would the solutions be?
Well, affordable housing, for one, that's got to be a top priority. And efficient public transport.
Right, so people can get around without relying on cars so much.
Yeah, and green spaces too. Parks, gardens, just places where people can breathe and relax.
Definitely. Quality of life is important too, not just concrete and buildings.
Absolutely. And then there's technology, of course, smart cities initiatives, using data to manage resources better, that kind of thing.
Like those traffic lights that adjust based on traffic flow, stuff like that?
Exactly. Or optimized waste management, even using sensors for public safety. There's so much potential there.
It's pretty amazing what technology can do these days.
It is. And we shouldn't forget about incorporating traditional Indian wisdom, too.
Oh, like the step wells of Rajasthan. Those ancient water harvesting systems.
Exactly. We've got a rich history of sustainable practices. Let's use it.
I like that, blending the old and the new.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, it all comes down to, well, making these cities work for everyone.
Yeah, equity and equality. And sustainability, of course. It's all connected.
Absolutely. So if we're thinking about this from a UPSC perspective, what kind of questions might come up?
Well, I'd say anything from analyzing the challenges of urbanization to evaluating government policies for sustainable development.
So it's not just about knowing the facts, it's about applying them.
Right. It's about thinking critically about the issues and forming your own arguments.
Right, good to keep in mind. Now, let's move on to something that's also a major concern globally and here in India, food security.
Okay.
There's this UNCTAD report that really emphasizes the role of trade in combating hunger and famine. The stats are pretty startling, you know.
Yeah, I saw that.
In 2023, over 280 million people faced acute hunger, and over 730 million were chronically hungry. That's a lot of people.
It is, and it shows the scale of the problem we're facing.
And the report argues that trade can actually be a solution.
Oh, interesting. How so?
Well, for one, it ensures availability. Think about it. 30% of Africa's cereal needs are met through imports.
Right, so countries that can't produce enough food can rely on imports.
Exactly, and it can also help stabilize prices and provide support during crises. Like, remember the Black Sea Initiative during the Russia-Ukraine war?
Yeah, where they were exporting grain and fertilizer.
Right, that helped a lot of countries avoid serious food shortages.
So trade can be a buffer, sort of?
Exactly. But, I mean, there are definitely downsides to relying too heavily on imports, right?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, what happens if those supply chains get disrupted? Pandemic, war, anything could happen.
Right, we saw that with COVID. Suddenly borders were closing, supply chains were in chaos, prices were skyrocketing.
It was a mess. And then there's the issue of rising transportation costs. That can make imported food really expensive, especially for developing countries.
And we can't forget about trade barriers, things like tariffs.
Oh, yeah. Those can add up to 20% to the cost of imported food. It's a lot.
So it's a balancing act, figuring out how to maximize the benefits of trade while minimizing those risks.
It is. It's a complex issue.
Definitely. Now let's shift gears a bit and talk about something closer to home. Police reform in India.
Okay, good topic.
Yeah, the Home Minister was recently reviewing the Bureau of Police Research and Development,
Mm.
and he really stressed the need to implement those new criminal laws and tackle the challenges facing the police force, trying to improve their image globally.
It's definitely something that needs attention.
It is, and
Oh.
it all ties into this larger question of police reform, which, well, it's something that comes up a lot on the UPSC exam, right?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
So to understand it better, I think it's important to remember that policing is primarily a state subject in India.
Right. Each state has its own police force.
But the central government does play a role,
Ah.
especially when it comes to intelligence and national security.
Yeah, it's kind of a shared responsibility.
It is. And what about the actual functions of the police? I mean, it's more than just catching criminals, right?
Oh, absolutely. They enforce laws, investigate crimes, maintain public order, provide security.
Yeah, it's a huge responsibility.
It is. And then there's the question of accountability. Who's making sure they're actually doing all of that properly?
Right. That's where things like the Modernization of State Police Forces scheme come in.
The MPF?
Yeah, it's a 5-year program, 2021 to 2026, with 15 different sub-schemes aimed at improving everything from infrastructure to training.
That sounds pretty comprehensive.
It is. There's also the Smart Policing Initiative, introduced back in 2014.
Smart.
It stands for, well, it's a whole list of things.
Mhm.
Strict and sensitive, modern and mobile, alert and accountable.
Wow, they really packed it in there.
They did. And they're also pushing to increase women's representation in the police force.
Oh, that's good to hear.
Right. I mean, a more diverse police force can only be a good thing.
Absolutely.
Now, this next topic is a tough one, but it's important, especially considering the recent tragedy at Tirupati.
The stampede.
Yeah. It's a stark reminder of how crucial effective crowd management is, especially in India, where we have so many large gatherings.
It's heartbreaking, those kinds of incidents.
It is. And it's not an isolated incident, unfortunately. Between 1954 and 2012, almost 80% of all stampedes in India happened at religious gatherings.
Wow, that's a scary statistic.
It is. So what can be done? How do we prevent these kinds of tragedies?
Well, the NDMA, the National Disaster Management Authority, has issued some guidelines on crowd management.
What do they say?
Well, things like capacity planning, understanding crowd behavior, risk assessment.
So making sure the venue can handle the crowd, anticipating potential problems, that sort of thing.
Exactly. And then there's things like information management, safety and security, medical services. It's a whole system.
It sounds like it. Are there any countries that are doing this really well? Countries we could learn from?
Definitely. Japan and Singapore, they're using some really advanced technology for crowd management.
Hmm.
AI-powered monitoring systems, real-time data analysis, all that.
Wow, so they can actually predict how crowds will move and react.
In a way, yes. And then there's Saudi Arabia for the Hajj pilgrimage.
Oh yeah, they have millions of people there every year.
Millions. And they manage it incredibly well. They use crowd flow modeling, designated time slots for rituals, tons of security personnel.
It's a massive operation.
It is. But it shows what's possible when you have a well-planned system.
All right, let's shift gears again to something a bit more positive. Organic farming.
Okay, yeah.
The Ministry of Commerce and Industry just launched the 8th edition of the National Program for Organic Production, NPOP.
I saw that.
It's all about strengthening India's organic certification system and supporting our farmers.
It's a good initiative. India's already a leader in organic farming, you know?
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
We're first in the world in terms of organic producers, second in organic agricultural land.
It's impressive.
We have over 7 million hectares of certified organic farmland, and our organic exports are expected to hit 20,000 crore in a few years.
That's a lot of organic produce.
It is. And this new edition of the MPOP, it includes some key improvements. They've simplified the certification process, especially for those organic grower groups.
That's good. Makes it easier for farmers to get certified.
Exactly. And they're providing better market support, connecting farmers with buyers. And they've launched some cool new portals, too.
Oh, tell me about those.
Well, there's the MPOP portal, the Organic Promotion portal, TraceNet 2.0 for traceability. They even revamped the APITA portal. It's all about making things easier and more transparent.
It sounds like they're really investing in the organic sector.
They are. Now, get ready for this. India is taking a giant leap in genomics research.
Oh, wow. What's happening?
A 10,000 genome database is being made available to researchers worldwide through the Indian Biological Data Center, the IBDC.
Wow, that's a massive amount of data.
Is. And they're using this system called the Framework for Exchange of Data Protocols, FEED. Basically, it's open access for researchers everywhere.
That's amazing. What kind of research is this database for?
It's part of the Genome India project, which was launched back in 2020. They're trying to catalog the genetic variations found in the Indian population.
Oh, I see, like mapping the Indian genome.
Exactly. And this open access database, it's a game changer for research. It could lead to breakthroughs in healthcare, agriculture, you name it.
Think about the possibilities for personalized medicine.
It's incredible, right? And it could really boost India's bioeconomy. We've already seen incredible growth in that sector from $10 billion in 2014 to $130 billion last year.
Wow, that's a huge jump.
It is. And they're aiming for $300 billion by 2030. So this database, it could really accelerate things.
It's exciting to see India leading the way in this kind of research.
It is. All right, let's do a quick rundown of some other important news, our quick hits, shall we?
Yeah, sounds good.
First up, the Kisan Pekan Patra, the farmer ID.
Okay.
It's now mandatory for new PM Kisan applicants. Basically, they're linking farmers to land records and creating a farmer's registry.
It's a way to streamline things, make sure the benefits reach the right people.
Exactly. Now, the Supreme Court just made a big decision on queer rights. They dismissed those review petitions in the Supriya Chakraborty case.
The one about marriage equality.
Yeah. So they're leaving that decision up to the legislature, but they did order the formation of a committee to examine queer rights.
It's a step forward, at least.
It is. Now, there's been some cool development in the field of surface-enhanced Raman spectroscopy, or SIRS.
SIRS.
Researchers have developed these new nanocatalysts that have tons of potential applications.
Wow, that's really interesting.
And speaking of cool tech, Cornell University's anemia phone.
I've heard of that.
Well, it's been transferred to the ICMR, the Indian Council of Medical Research.
So they're going to use it to assess anemia in India.
Exactly. It's a simple way to test for iron deficiency using a smartphone camera. Pretty amazing, right?
It is.
Now, Hindustan Aeronautics Limited, or HAL, just made a statement about their Dhruv Advanced Light Helicopters, the DALHs.
Oh, right, those helicopters.
They're saying their flying safety record is better than global standards.
That's good to know.
It is. Okay, let's talk e-way bills.
Okay.
The latest numbers are in, and they're showing a really strong recovery in supply chains.
That's a good sign for the economy.
It is. And starting April 1st, they're making multi-factor authentication mandatory for e-way bills.
So adding another layer of security.
Exactly. Now, NEIOG's Women Entrepreneurship Platform just launched a program called Empower Biz.
What's that about?
It's all about empowering women entrepreneurs with skills and resources, helping them succeed.
That's a fantastic initiative.
It is. And finally, a bit of a controversial topic. There's a proposal to rename the Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of America.
Oh, wow, I saw that.
Yeah, it sparked a lot of debate about naming conventions and international cooperation and all that.
Yeah, it's a sensitive issue. Who
Yeah.
gets to decide what something is called?
Exactly.
Yeah,
It's a good reminder that even seemingly small things can have big implications.
definitely.
All right, I think that covers it for part one. Phew, we've covered a lot today,
We have a lot of diverse topics, too.
like always. But hey, that's what makes these deep dives so interesting.
It does. Keeps things lively.
Absolutely.
Welcome back, everyone. We're diving right back into those current affairs, picking up where we left off.
Yep, still January 11th, 2025. Lots more to unpack. And remember, just knowing the facts isn't enough for the UPSC.
You've got to connect the dots.
Exactly. Analyze those trends, build those arguments. That's what they're looking for.
Right, so let's keep that in mind as we go through the rest of today's news.
Sounds good.
So we were talking about the future of Indian cities.
Yeah, that huge population growth, the strain on resources.
Right, and it made me think about the whole crowd management issue. Especially after that stampede in Tirupati, it's a real concern.
It is, and it's something we have to get right. As those cities get more crowded, those risks just multiply.
Exactly, and that's where those NDMA guidelines we talked about are so important. Capacity planning, understanding how crowds behave.
Right. Risk assessment, all that. It's all connected.
It is, and it's the kind of thing that could easily come up on the UPSC. Imagine a question about disaster management, crowd control. You could use Tirupati as a case study, talk about the NDMA guidelines.
Show them you understand how it all works in the real world, not just the theory.
Exactly. Okay, let's switch gears a bit. What about agriculture? We were talking about organic farming earlier.
Yeah, India's doing really well in that sector.
It's a good example of sustainable development, supporting local farmers. It ticks a lot of boxes, from a UPSC perspective.
Definitely. And it's a growing market, too, with those huge export numbers.
Right. So if you get a question about the government's initiatives for sustainable agriculture, NTOP is a great example.
Absolutely. Talk about the key features, the simplified certification, the market support.
The digital platforms they're using, it's a whole system, really.
It is. And it's not just about the government either. A lot of farmers in India have been using organic methods for generations.
That's true. It's part of our tradition. And it's something worth mentioning, in your UPSC answers, shows a deeper understanding of the issue.
Good point.
No.
Okay, let's talk about something else that India is doing really well in. Genomics research.
Yeah, that database they're making public is a big deal.
It is, and it really shows India's commitment to open science, to global collaboration.
It could make India a real leader in that field.
Absolutely. Now, I know we talked about the Genome India project earlier, but let's break it down a bit more, for our UPSC folks.
Good idea. It's the kind of topic that could come up in a lot of different ways. Ethics of genetic research, personalized medicine.
Right, there are a lot of angles.
So it's important to understand the goals of the project, the potential applications, the challenges.
Right, it's about the bigger picture, not just the details.
Exactly. And don't forget to connect it to other issues: healthcare, biotechnology, intellectual property rights.
Yeah, the UPSC loves those connections. Okay, let's revisit some of those quick hits from earlier, just to refresh our memories.
Sounds good. What do you want to start with?
How about the Kisan Pechan Patra, the farmer ID?
Right. Now mandatory for PM Kisan applicants.
It's a good example of using technology to make those welfare programs more efficient, more transparent.
Yeah, making sure the benefits reach the right people, reducing the risk of fraud. It's a smart move.
Definitely. And something that could easily be relevant for a UPSC question about governance, about technology, about agricultural policy.
Lots of possibilities.
All right, what about that Supreme Court ruling on the Supriya Chakraborty case?
Right. The one about marriage equality.
They didn't actually recognize queer marriages, but they did order the formation of a committee to look into queer rights.
So it's a bit of a mixed bag, I guess.
It is, but it highlights the ongoing fight for LGBTQ plus rights in India, the complexities of legal reform.
And it's a perfect example of the kind of social issue that could come up on the UPSC. The legal aspects, the ethical considerations.
All right, they want to see you engage with those complex questions. Okay, let's get back to science for a minute. Remember those nanocatalysts we were talking about?
Yeah, those were cool.
They have so much potential for environmental cleanup, for electronics, for all sorts of things.
It's amazing how something so small can have such a big impact.
It is.
Yeah.
And those new nanocatalysts, they're making surface-enhanced Raman spectroscopy even more powerful.
SIRS.
Yeah, it's a technique for analyzing materials at a molecular level, like a super-powered fingerprint scanner for molecules.
Wow, that's pretty high tech.
It is. And speaking of cool tech, the anemia phone, remember that?
The one that uses a smartphone camera to test for iron deficiency?
Yep, that one. It's been transferred to the ICMR so they can use it to tackle anemia in India.
That's great news. It's a simple solution, but it could make a big difference.
It could. Okay, let's talk about HAL's statement on the Dhruv helicopters.
Right, they're saying the safety record is excellent.
Better than global standards, apparently. Which is a good sign, for India's aerospace industry.
Definitely. It shows they're building high-quality aircraft. And it's something that could definitely come up on the UPSC. Questions about India's defense capabilities, self-reliance.
Absolutely. Now, what about those e-way bills?
Yeah, we were talking about those earlier. The numbers are looking good, showing a strong recovery in those supply chains.
Which is a positive sign for the economy as a whole.
And they're implementing multi-factor authentication for e-way bills soon to make the system more secure.
It's all about improving efficiency and transparency.
And it's the kind of thing you could definitely mention in a UPSC answer, about economic reforms, about the use of technology and governance.
Good point. Okay, I think we've covered pretty much everything for part 2.
Yeah, I think so. Lots to think about, for sure.
Definitely. All right, welcome back, everyone. This is it, the final stretch of our deep dive for today.
Back for more, huh? We've been through quite a bit already, haven't we? Urbanization, food security, police reforms.
Oh, and crowd management, those organic farms. Even delved into the world of genomes.
India is really making its mark in a lot of areas.
It is. But remember, the UPSC exam isn't just about knowing what's happening. It's about understanding why it's happening.
Absolutely. You've got to be able to connect those dots, analyze the trends, build a solid argument. That's what sets you apart.
Right. So let's keep honing those skills as we wrap up today's deep dive.
Sounds good to me.
All right, so we were talking about empowering women entrepreneurs earlier. Remember that Niti Aayog initiative, Empower Biz?
Yeah, equipping women with the skills and resources to launch their own businesses. It's a great program.
It is. I mean, it's not just about social justice, it's about economic growth, too.
Exactly. When women succeed, everyone benefits.
Right. So if you were thinking about this from a UPSC perspective, how would you approach it?
Well, you could definitely use Empower Biz as a case study, couldn't you? Talk about its objectives, its potential impact.
Maybe even tie it into the broader policy framework for women's economic empowerment in India.
Absolutely. Show them you understand the bigger picture.
Okay, now let's touch on that last news item, the one that caused a bit of a stir.
The Gulf of Mexico, renaming it to the Gulf of America.
Yeah, that one. I mean, it sounds simple enough, but
Oh, it's way more complex than it seems. You've got historical context, cultural sensitivities, international relations.
it really highlights the need for cooperation on the global stage, especially when you're dealing with shared resources.
Definitely. It's a good lesson for anyone, but especially for those preparing for the UPSC. Understanding how global dynamics work, those are crucial skills.
Absolutely. So we've analyzed the news, we've connected it back to the UPSC. What's our final takeaway for today?
We've seen a lot of examples of India's growing influence in the world, right? From organic farming to genomics, even space exploration.
And as India rises, it faces a really crucial question. How do we balance our national interests with our global responsibilities?
It's a delicate balance.
It is. Think about the implications for India's foreign policy, for economic engagement, for tackling global issues like climate change.
It's something to really think about.
It is. These are the big questions, the ones that really matter. And frankly, they're the kind of questions that often pop up on the UPSC exam.
Yeah.
So as you're studying, as you're preparing, keep that in mind.
Keep asking those questions. Keep searching for those answers.
Exactly. All right, everyone, that brings us to the end of today's deep dive. We've covered a lot of ground, unpacked a lot of complex issues.
Hopefully we've given you some food for thought, some new perspectives to consider.
Absolutely. And if you found this deep dive helpful, don't forget to like and subscribe for more. We'll be back with a fresh batch of current affairs soon.
Keep those brains buzzing. Keep those UPSC dreams alive. We'll see you next time.
Until then, happy studying.